Lieutenant Geordie LaForge served as an ensign under Captain Zimbada. Inspector Lestrade is in a deuce of a dilemma. And Data and Data and Geordie can be reached at 221B Baker Street, not to be confused with the great song by Jerry Rafferty. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 2, Episode 3, Elementary Dear Data, written by Brian Allen Lane, based upon certain characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, directed by Robert Bowman. This was December 5th, 1988. Where were you? Also, we would like to give you a special thanks to Eric James and Dave Mattingly for sponsoring this episode. Thank you very much, Eric James and Dave Mattingly. They chose this episode above all. What do you think, Cirroc? How are you?
I think very good episode to choose. And Dave, I like your brother Don. He was always my favorite, one of my favorite swingers on the Yankees.
Yeah, favorite Yankee.
One of them. He was up there. I really
Coming from a Dodger
him,
fan, that's pretty good.
I like Dave Winfield too. I just like certain strides. I thought Ken Griffey Jr. had the best swing in baseball, but yeah, but I did like Dave Winfield's wide stance. I liked Kirby Puckett's kind of like tucked in
the Twins, the legendary Twins player Kirby Puckett.
Yeah, so I used to watch people's batting stances, so that's all. Don Mattingly had a nice one.
And Eric James, we're a fan of his brother LeBron, right? Let's
absolutely, absolutely, one of the greatest.
Yeah,
one of the greats. But yeah, this is a good episode to. They obviously know how much this episode resonates with the fans and how good it is. I think this is really one of the better episodes I've seen so far of Next Generation.
What do you think, by the way, of Sherlock Holmes? Are you a Sherlock Holmes aficionado? Do you know a little bit of it? Did you read any of the books ever? What's your knowledge there?
Yeah, I don't really have any extensive, knowledge on Sherlock Holmes. I have kind of the basic understanding about it. I wasn't big into it. I do like mysteries, a guy who watches Columbo, and it's one of those kinds of, looking for clues and solving mysteries. So I do like that. I just wasn't into the language of Sherlock Holmes, which is the same reason why I wasn't really that into Shakespeare, because I was turned off by the language. It was just not, appealing to me.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've never read a Sherlock Holmes book. I don't really know anything. All I know is that there's Sherlock Holmes and there's Watson. That's the extent of it. I don't even know if I knew who Moriarty was before The Next Generation. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. However, I will say that any books that were written, over 100 years ago that have such staying power that they are embedded in our, lexicon, where people say, I feel like I've heard slang like, "Oh, nice job, Sherlock," or "No shit, Sherlock." That's what it is, right? So the fact that it has entered our lexicon and we all know who Sherlock Holmes is, even though we've never read it, we don't, whatever. I'm sure there must have been movies on it. I know that there's a TV show currently running called Elementary. I believe we have a favorite writer who writes on Elementary. Let me check to confirm that.
Yeah. I wasn't really big on it, but I am aware of it. It's just something that has been created that is basically a brand in itself, I never read any Sherlock Holmes stuff, but I'm familiar with some of it's elementary, my dear Watson, and those kinds of quotes that are made it around in circulation, But one thing I do say though, My critique of it is the language, but I think one of the things that I enjoyed about this episode was the language. So, as I've gotten older, my appreciation for different things have changed, and watching Data and Brent Spiner going through this character and playing it with this accent was one of the highlights for me of this episode.
I thought that our buddy Robert Hewitt Wolf worked on Elementary, the Sherlock Holmes TV show, so I'm just trying to confirm that.
Okay,
that's what I'm pretty sure. Let me just check.
That's the one with Lucy Liu.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Yes, he has written 16 episodes, and obviously he's probably a producer as well, as is usually. Yeah, he's an executive producer. All 113 episodes, and he's written himself 16 episodes. So shout out to him. I'll bet you he knows this Star Trek episode well, and I bet you his Sherlock Holmes knowledge is through the roof, because it's going to have to be. So huge shout out to our good friend, Mr. Robert Hewitt Wolf. We'll have to ask him if he likes this episode or how many times he's watched it. Mm-hmm.
It's got to be. And then he would recognize a lot of the things that they were probably referencing that's in the books, the snuff box from Lord Von de Ville, whatever his name was.
That was nuts. Wilhelm Gottfried Sigmund van Ormsteen.
I did not.
I'm butchering that, but I was like, but you know what it was? I didn't write it down. I'm like, no way am I writing that down. But I was like, I'll bet you right now, Cirroc, at some point, Cirroc's gonna be like, oh, I thought you wrote that down or something. Because sometimes I don't write something and you expect. So I'm like, I better go write it down. He's going to call me out. He's going to call me out.
I was expecting you to write it down, actually, because I just wrote the snuff box of, and then I put the scribble.
The Grand Negus. The Beatles snuff box.
But it made me laugh, though, because it was one of those moments. And what made me laugh even more was thinking of Brent Spiner trying to memorize that line and being corrected when he doesn't. No, it's Lord Volmhelm.
His accent was his accent was pretty freaking good. We'll have to ask some native German speakers.
I thought it was great,
but it sounded pretty darn good. Good for him.
Yeah, his accent throughout this episode was great, and his going in and out of the accent was another thing that I thought was great. So he would be committed to the Sherlock Holmes accent, and then some point, Geordi would ask him something, and he would say, "No, I'm doing it because this is why." He would completely drop the accent,
kind of like Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, but on purpose. Shout out to Kevin Costner's in and out accent in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh, that was a known debacle, I see.
I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one to have noticed that egregious accenting. Sorry, Kevin. He watches the show, so I'm just giving him a nice little ribbing. That's all.
Oh, yeah.
He's one of our biggest patron donors. Everybody at home, please be sure to go to patreon.com/the7th rule and join Kevin Costner in supporting this show. We'd really appreciate it. It starts as little as $1 per month, and it helps keep the lights on. It helps us write fresh new jokes, which we need. And please make sure you are liking this video, subscribing to our channel. Give us a 5-star rating if you are listening in with your friends. And please make sure to click that share button and tell all of your pals about us. Now back to the show.
It's funny because you picked that image behind you where, the two of them are dressed up. And by the way, the costuming in this episode was great. Love the outfits. Love that Sherlock trench coat that Data was wearing. That style is obviously a very period coat and just takes you instantly back to the time. So does the fit and cut on Geordi's outfit that is behind you with the kind of derby hat that's on top.
Is that what that is, a derby hat?
It looks like a brown derby type of hat. Not on the one on Data, but the one on Jordy.
Oh, this one, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. But um, the thing that I noticed when I was watching that part, I was kind of intrigued that he was able to walk down the streets of London in whatever year that is, with that visor on, and nobody called
Well,
that out.
and walking next to a pale, shiny face with yellow eyes. But that's the holodeck. The holodeck is made to have these kind of protocols where people don't really notice that. I think. I mean, it's kind of just goes by whatever the plot wants. Sometimes
Right.
they go like, "Why does Worf look like this?" But other times they just don't even. They're just like, "Whatever. Yeah, it's just a guy." So I don't know. But by the way, Worf looked cool when he was all dressed up.
Yeah.
And what was that? And Picard hit his cane, and his hat popped out. And I watched that like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, what am I watching here? Did they have like crazy technology 100 years ago where that was a thing that they did, or is that just a Star Trek edition? I don't know.
Well, it's like some old magic trick stuff to me. It looks like what the old magicians used to do when they pop their hat out and stuff, and do stuff like that. But I thought it was weird that Worf got all dressed up, and I really liked the scene because it was great when he was dressed up and Picard was dressed up. But then Riker says, you're going to be a big hit in London, and he's talking to Worf. And I was the way he said it, it just stood out to me. Like, what does he mean you're going to be a big hit in London? So when he said that, I was expecting Worf to actually deliver a big hit in London. Like, so I thought he would come through at some point and punch somebody at some point, right?
And be like, "Ow, werewolf in London." Shout out to Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, our favorite human in the world that used to love to sing that song by Warren Zevon, a San Jose native like myself. But everybody give a shout out to Werewolves of London or Werewolf in London. Say that one time fast.
Say it once. So yeah, I was expecting to see him on the in the holodeck program, but he wasn't. That was the last shot of him when he was in the hallway about to get in. Yeah. So I'm like, what was he standing by the entrance or something? I
wonder if Michael Dorn was like, why am I here today? You did this whole tailored fitting. You did all this stuff. I look real great. I said like one line, and then they go in and I don't appear. I wonder if he had a scene and they cut it out or something.
That's what I'm wondering. Did he that's why I'm saying it felt like something was cut out, because the "you're going to be a big hit in London" line was basically, to me, a foreshadow of something coming up with Worf in London, right? There's going to be a scene there where we get to see him being a big hit. And it felt like, why would you get him tailored up in the outfit, ready to go, and not even acknowledge that he's not going to be on the mission? Instead, like, "Hey, Worf, sorry, we're going to leave you behind. Sorry, you're not coming with us this time." And then, "Well, I got dressed up for nothing." That kind of a moment would have been funny to watch. So I was expecting to see him.
Yeah, that's true. He did. And there was the other part where that I thought maybe something got cut out or a character got cut out, because I thought Data as Sherlock said that Pulaski got carried away by 2 people.
Mm-hmm.
A taller person and a shorter person. And I was like, we never saw that second person. We never saw that. Maybe I completely misread that. Maybe he meant a taller person dragged away a shorter person, but I thought he said,
no, 2 people.
2 people dragged her away. But we never saw that second person. We have no idea who it was. They never showed up. It had no bearing on the story. So it was very confusing, as if later on we saw the second person, or Worf incapacitates that second person, or Data does, or something, and then they just cut that scene out, or something. I don't know. Everybody in the live chat and in the comments below, please let us know what are we missing here? Who was that second person? Where did Worf go, all dressed up and nowhere to go? And what's your favorite Kevin Costner movie? Of course, that's the big pressing question. Shout out to Kevin Costner.
I'm going to say Untouchables for me.
I'm going to say Waterworld for me. I really liked.
No, really, Waterworld?
Yeah, I liked the concept of it, and I liked that everything just it was just cool to see the boats that they had. You know, like they were all kind of post-apocalyptic, and that always lends itself to a lot of creativity. I know there's like some weird events and conventions out in the desert that are like post-apocalyptic things. I forgot what they're called, but people can get really creative with that. And then Waterworld had that creativity. Also, there is, I don't know if it's still there, but there used to be the Waterworld show at Universal Studios here in LA. That was always fun. I think they replaced it with something else. But anyway, moving on from that.
Yeah, Waterworld's not on my list. Bodyguard would be the second place, probably.
Never saw it.
Houston. What?
I never saw it.
Oh my gosh.
I think,
that was the must
not to get too far off track. I believe The Bodyguard, and I could be wrong, I think the only reason it did well was because of that phenomenal song. If you have a phenomenal song that everybody loves, and then you show them a trailer with that song blasting, you know, going through, people would be like, I gotta see this movie. I'm already crying, you know, but I don't know if it was good or not.
Yeah, it was good. It was Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner. Yeah. They were in love, and he was protecting her, and, you know.
Wasn't he in The Postman, too?
Yeah, we're getting real far away from it.
Something like that. Anyway.
Yeah, he was.
Inspector Lestrade was there. He was the guy. He was there for just a second, and he said something. I don't know, but it was when Data does my favorite line, which is when he goes, Watson.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I was like, that's pretty good. I mean, he's got some great, Brent Spiner is a great comedian. He's got great comedic chops, and he shows it off here and there as Data, you know, doing it. And when he pulled out his pipe and was like rubbing it against the book spines, very a creative move that I'm sure must have been a choice on his part. But then he says, you know, he does that tisk tisk, and he says, "Pray continue, Inspector." And the inspector brought in the guy that was hiding the picture in his jacket. That's who Inspector Lestrade was. Mm-hmm. And Inspector Lestrade said, he's having a real deuce of a dilemma. I don't know why. He's like, I'm having quite a deuce of a dilemma. Like, do you need to use the...
So drop that deuce.
Yeah, just go take care of it, bro. We'll be here when you get back. Don't torture yourself. It's not a dilemma. Just listen to your body. Listen to your body.
Who's Captain Zimbada?
We don't know. I think that may be the only time we've ever heard that name. But I did like hearing Geordi. I just love when we get a little bit more fleshing out and backstory of a character. And Geordi is one of those characters that didn't get a lot of that in the first season. Remember, we got a lot of Tasha Yar talking about rape gangs and talking about a kitty she had, you know, just these little nuggets that just let you know she had a cat before. Oh, she, you know, went through some crazy shit when she was a kid. She's super tough now. So we didn't know much of that about Geordi other than the fact that he was blind. But now, you know, we get a little bit more of that. He was an ensign under, what was the guy's name? Eric Estrada, Zimbada.
Africa Zimbada.
Yeah. And he clearly has a great relationship still with his old captain, which is great. So he built that USS Victory ship, which was also cool.
That was really cool as well. Those brought me back to my childhood and model building and stuff. I never built anything like that.
Okay, that's crazy.
We used to build little cars and stuff, but you know, you decal it, you paint it, you put it all together, and it's just model building in general is something that's fun. So that was a nice addition too, because you have the historical Navy ship, and then you're on the modern Enterprise ship, and the kind of connections there that they made, even towards the end when Picard was talking about Bristol fashion, and he said it's an
That's
old Navy say.
that's where I felt betrayed. I was like, you see, everybody, as a Frenchman, this is a very it's we know that Picard is not French. Patrick Stewart he's not just British. He is very, very British. And then when he was talking about Bristol, whatever it was, Bristol fashion, I was like, see, he's even showing us just the full depth of his Britishness, of his Englishmanness, by saying, "Oh, you didn't know, Data? Yeah, us old footballers from Bristol and then the Navy." I'm like, you are so British, bro. Don't come on. Everybody knows. But I really did like that scene though, with the model building and showing that Geordi is not just an engineer by trade, but an engineer by passion. That he has like this respect for the history of ships, from wooden boats to metallic spaceships. And he's got a steady hand. It means he's got patience. It means that he has very good hand visor coordination, because that's all stuff that I could not do. So clearly it gives us some insight as to the kind of person that Geordi LaForge is, I thought.
Yeah, it shows us his passion. What else is exposed in this about Geordi is his interest in data. I felt like there was a chemistry there that I saw that was amplified, that wasn't really as much in the foreground as it is in this episode. They become essentially what I feel like is like what we see with the Bashir and O'Brien kind of going into that buddy zone. That's what I felt in this episode, in this moment. I felt like Geordi took a special interest. It was really pleasing him in the inside to prod and poke into the curiosity of Data and where his mind was at, trying to be the all-encompassing expert on Sherlock Holmes and trying to challenge Data. And even Pulaski, I felt, was less abrasive than I've seen her in the past, because a lot of her insults were stinging in the past when she would refer to Data, and in this time, it seemed like she took a little bit of the edge off. She still came with the same kind of criticism of Data when she says, "Yeah, it's like asking a computer not to compute." So she started off kind of in the same temperament that she normally has, but I felt there was an edge taken off, and it wasn't so cutting.
She's still rough on Data. Hopefully we're going to see more of an arc there, because those of us that have seen Data now for a full season, the fans have started to get attached to him, and they start getting a little defensive, saying, "Hey, we're getting a little protective of Data, even though his feelings can't get hurt. We feel like we need to protect him. Like, don't call him that. He has, a personality, and he's real." And actually, that was kind of the theme of this episode. But before we get into that, I want to add to your point about Geordi and Data. I did put that in my notes, that this was the first time. I mean, we've seen Data and Geordi show signs of friendship in the first season. This was the first one where they're not just friends, but they're buddies. Like they're pals, like they hang out, they're bros. Like they're spending their free time together. And this was that first time, right? Like Julian and Miles, like Tom and Harry in Voyager, like Charles Trip Tucker and Archer in Enterprise. It just, or Spock and Kirk or whomever. It was just fun to see. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's a buddy moment, and that's what you got out of this. You got a real sense that they care for each other, that they were, like when Geordi just says, computer end program, started to stomp out of there. And when he stormed out of the first program, it wasn't that he didn't want to participate. It was he wanted to participate in a certain way. And so I felt like, yeah, that's like two buddies arguing over something and finding a way to work it out and finding the solution and going back at it again with optimism and burying the hatchet of whatever argument you have 5 seconds ago, because that's really not what it's about. It's just about our friendship growing. And yeah, I might have had a little, spaz moment, but we figured it out and we worked it out. So those kinds of things show signs to me of a friendship that is both people are trying to be friends, both people are interested in each other's well-being and caring about each other, feelings and how they, respond. So I think that's what stood out to me in this episode, which is why I liked a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like the fact that it's a period piece that didn't feel too period. It actually blended the modern aspect of them being on the ship well enough for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let's talk more about this in just a moment. We're going to hit our break, everybody, and we're going to talk about the theme of this episode, too, because we started to talk about that. A lot more to discuss. Yeah. Everybody stick around, and we'll be right back on the seventh rule, probably. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule of Cirroc Lofton, as you know.
Hello, hello.
Here are our non-appearance mentions of the week. Not non-appearance mentions. There were none. The trivioids of the week. I don't think there are any non-appearance mentions, but here are the trivioids of the week. The Enterprise is 3 days early for its rendezvous with the USS Victory. Geordi has the original USS Victory, or built it. Geordi served as an ensign under Captain Zimbata. Wind and sail is the proper way to move a ship. Data and Geordi can be reached at 221B Baker Street. That is the Jerry Rafferty song. Everybody that knows Jerry Rafferty song loves it, Baker Street. The Emerald Tie Pin was presented to Sherlock Holmes by Queen Victoria. Inspector Lestrade is in a deuce of a dilemma. Dr. Pulaski calls Data a fraud. Data tells Watson to come. Moriarty knows the computer is wiser than the Oracle at Delphi. That was interesting. I wonder what you know about that. You usually know a lot about that good historical stuff. Dr. Pulaski loves Moriarty's tea, and Professor Moriarty is a civilized abductor. Cirroc, what do you know about the Oracle at Delphi? I've heard about that a bunch of times, but I've never researched it, so I don't really know much.
If I'm not mistaken, it's in the Greek gods where they would gather to find predictions. If I'm not mistaken, that's in the Zeus category and all of that. Apollo.
Right. Actually, I just looked up. It does mention Apollo as well. The Oracle at Delphi where a priestess supposedly delivered messages from Apollo to those who sought advice. The messages were usually obscure or ambiguous. Interesting. Do love that Greek mythology.
Yeah. They used a little bit of that too in the movie 300.
Oh, I love that movie. I love it.
Yes. When Leonidas goes to the mountaintop to see this oracle, which was that woman swimming in the pond and all that stuff, and being protected by those weird looking, Grand Nagus looking aliens and stuff. So yeah, that was a take on the Oracle at Delphi, kind of going to see that Oracle.
Not to be confused with the Oracle of the Matrix movies, everybody knows as well. Or where the Warriors used to play in Oakland, Oracle Arena, everybody.
Exactly.
Okay. So, or I guess the company Oracle, which I'm sure the stadium was named after, but I don't know anything about them.
That's Larry Ellison.
Yeah.
Larry Ellison.
Rich guy.
But yeah, it was, we were going to get into a little bit about the kind of the theme of this episode, which I definitely want to do. But I wanted to also talk about going back to what we ended the last segment on, which is how Geordi and Data were going through this, episode together. But the line was no mystery, no game, there's no mystery. That's what Geordi's point was.
Right.
And then he was saying no game, no fun. So that essentially really sums up a lot of what I felt when I was watching this episode. I felt it was a game that was fun, right? They basically lined me up for fun and for a bit of a gamesmanship, right? And so that's what I was already expecting. That's why I feel it delivered on those right away when I was watching this episode. I got the fun aspect out of it, and I got the gamesmanship, especially the clue, and the deduction that Data was doing as Sherlock Holmes. Oh no, it was like this, and this person was drunk, and just the whole deduction. I love that aspect of this episode. I thought that made it light and fun. Also, the fact that even though their life was in danger when Moriarty had some kind of mechanism that was able to control the ship through whatever he built, which wasn't really explained very well.
Yeah, that was a little confusing to me too, but he got it and he figured it out pretty quickly, I guess.
I mean, how under that time's technology is he able to infiltrate the computer database with whatever he's able to build in whatever year they're supposedly in at this particular time? So
I guess I could explain that now that I think about it. At first I was just kind of like, that's weird, but now that I think about it, since everything that they're in the holodeck is a construct of photons and is a hologram, he could program into the computer, hey computer, when I pull this lever, you make the ship do this, like just consider it like a button, so I guess I could I could kind of piece that together. But when I first saw it, I was like, that's weird. But I guess we kind of there were a lot of things that I thought were kind of weird, like when they solved that one death, but then they said it's not connected. Part of me was like, well, then why have it in the story? But I guess it was for them to figure out that there's more to this. I don't know. They definitely crammed a lot into this episode, and there didn't seem to be a real climax, because I guess it didn't really need one. It was just kind of like a thinker. But when it ended, I was like, oh, that's it. There was no, the ship is in grave danger or this person's going to die. They basically just said, Moriarty. Yeah, no, you're right. You're pretty much alive, just like Data is. Anyway, we're going to turn off the lights on you. See ya.
Yeah, it ended with a conversation, essentially. And usually there's more there than a conversation. Usually there's some force involved with the resolution.
But I was okay with it because it was more of a moral play,
Yeah, and also what I was okay with it was the fact that Moriarty having Data's intellect or whatever capability to be an adversary for Data let me know that he was now transformed from just a basic level criminal to an intellectual criminal, let's say, or adversary. And which means that he would be subject to reason as opposed to just being a malicious actor. He would use reason, and you would be able to, if he, as Data is able to be convinced of something, right? You can convince Data of something if you explain things in a rational, logical way to him. Then he processes, oh, okay, and then he thinks about it. So it makes sense that Moriarty would also be the same, where he would say, okay, so there's no solution for this. All right, good to know. So I was okay with that. What I really want to highlight, though, which is connected to that, is the way Picard was featured in this episode. So we didn't get much Picard or Riker or Troy, very little Worf. We only got them, kind of a little bit in the beginning and then in the conference scene towards the end.
Yeah. I was wondering if we're going to see them at all, honestly, and then
Me
in that
too.
conference room. They were there for their one day.
For their
set.
one day, they came in on set, which is, this is probably a 7-day shoot. They only probably needed the other main cast members for that one day.
Yeah, Marina Sirtis is like, I got one line, cool, chill day, and then I got a week off.
Exactly. But having said that, I like the way Picard's tone was when he was receiving the information about Geordi kind of giving the parameters to the holodeck that caused this problem in the first place. There was a level of a reduced level of anger that I normally see from Picard. He's normally on tilt and, really pissed off about this. You're no better than that. And he was more reserved about it, receiving the information, and more calm, which I enjoyed to watch him deliberate upon the information in the way he did in this particular episode. I thought it was befitting of a captain, and also showed growth for me on how he's approaching the role.
Yeah, he's getting more comfortable in the role, and the writers are getting more comfortable writing for him. He seems to be softening and wisening a bit. But the interesting, kind of take on this episode is, if we get offended when Pulaski doesn't consider Data a person, not a robot, not an android, not a computer, but a person, an actual, living entity, then we should also, as Moriarty pointed out, feel the same way about Professor Moriarty, because he said, now that I'm aware, I have self-awareness, I'm aware of my consciousness, and he says, I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. So at that point, I feel like that's the big thing, is in order to consider something a person or something a someone, it is awareness, right? Once they're self-aware. And so that's the question, I think. Is Moriarty now a living being the same way that we consider Data one? And if so, is it moral for Picard to have just turned him off?
I would say that yes to both questions. My opinion is that if you are conscious of your existence and thinking, then that transfers you into the realm of existing on the same level of consciousness that we do. So even though you may not have the same makeup with flesh and bone, if you're able to think with the same consciousness, then I would say that would be a qualifier. We also saw that with Vic and Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Vic Fontaine was somebody that we care for and feel attached to, even though he's not, a flesh and blood character. So I do think that those things can happen. What I think is interesting is, and then to the other question about, is it moral for Picard to turn his lights off? I think that particular existence of this person in the holodeck is relative to the parameters given to their life existence, the same way we have parameters for our life existence in this world that we live in. Parameters of gravity, parameters of physics, the laws of physics, parameters of time, which we have been given a certain amount of finite time to experience in this form. And so those parameters change for a different kind of entity, like in Data's case, he's not bound by time in the same way. And neither is this computer program bound in the same way.
That's
by
true.
the same laws that govern our existence. So I wouldn't say it's immoral to turn the lights off on him, because the lights will get turned back on him, and that makes it no less moral to turn the lights back off as it is immoral to turn the lights off. It's just the parameters of the existence that you
I
live in.
agree with you till the end, when I think, yes, we turn him off. We turn him back on 200 years later. No time has passed for him. Who cares, right? What if we never turn him back on? Then his existence ceases, as far as we know and as far as he knows. So that's like killing or ending a life, I guess. But I did want to point out that we do see Moriarty later in Star Trek Picard Season 3, if you'll recall, when I believe Riker and Worf, spoiler alert, everybody, hang on for 10 seconds, are going to find Data/Lore, and they see Moriarty has returned. If you'll remember this moment, Moriarty, this was the actual guy, Daniel Davis, the actor, returning as Moriarty in that little 10 or 15 seconds holographic moment on Star Trek Picard out of Data's mind. So when we saw this character, that was from Data's mind, based on this episode and possibly more. Oh, wow. Speaking of which, it is almost time for the home run of the day, Cirroc. Who do you think deserves the home run of the day by the seventh rule?
I think the home run of the day goes to the writer, Brian Allen Lane. He's a single solo writer on this episode. We didn't see any of the usual suspects who have written regularly for Next Generation signed on. So that means he did this essentially all on his own, based on the original characters of Sherlock Holmes and Watson. But this is a fresh idea that he came up with. I thought it was an original. It becomes a theme that is repeated later on down the line in Star Trek, other Star Trek series, kind of doing period pieces and doing these kinds of murder mystery pieces. We've seen that in Deep Space Nine as well. It's something. It's a blend of the future and of the past. A nice blend of that. And I thought the knowledge that you'd have to have of Sherlock Holmes and Watson was extensive. So he obviously has a wealth of knowledge. He read all the books and decided to pick which pieces to use and create his own story out of other stories, kind of a patchwork job. I just think that is a level of creativity and kind of writing brilliance that is becomes the basis of a formula going forward in Star Trek and in science fiction. So this is something that's good for me. I'm going to give it to Brian Allen Lane.
Very cool. I checked him out, and he only did this one Star Trek episode. He's done a few other cool TV shows. We'll share that in the free-for-all for everybody to ooh and ah and giggle about. But on IMDb, there is another writer credited, and I mentioned it at the top, which is interesting because it's the first time I've ever seen a writing credit that parenthetically says uncredited. I've seen it for actors, like background actors. They get credit on IMDb or other things like that, but it's uncredited on the episode or the movie itself. And it says Arthur Conan Doyle. Parenthetically, instead of like written by or created by, it says based upon certain characters, and then another parenthetical says uncredited. So I wonder who added that. But that is an interesting little addition that Arthur Conan Doyle got credited for that. But anyway, my home run of the day it's got to be Brent Spiner. For me, because he got to show off more of his acting chops, more of his comedic chops. Although it almost seems like every time he shows off his acting chops, it is comedic regardless. It's just funny. Maybe he wasn't even trying to be funny. I don't know, but it was funny. And he was showing off his acting chops without going over the top, because somebody like him that can do extreme characters that are funny, like we've seen him in Night Court be an extreme character. We saw him in, was it Armageddon? Was it that movie where he was like some crazed scientist? So we've seen him play these extreme type of characters. So it's hard for him probably to wrangle that in and just be funny as Data and not go into extremely funny, which we've also seen him performing in conventions. But anyway, Brent Spiner, awesome actor, great job today. Yeah. Secondarily, Geordie LeVar Burton, he didn't get a ton to work with, but he's showing us his warmth. The warmth of LeVar Burton is coming through as Geordie LaForge, and we're probably going to get more and more and more of that again as the writers get more comfortable writing for that particular actor and they see what works with him best. I'll tell you what works best with us. It's a list of people, and those people are, and by the way, we'd like to give them a very special thanks, and their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Titus Mohler, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anna Post, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, Dequeue, Neal Akasaka, Justine Norton-Kertson, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manisfee, Marcia Classic Schreier, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason Okun. Everybody at home, don't forget patreon.com/the7th rule. That's why we're naming these people. So please join in the fun and stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. It's going to be wild. We'll be right back on the 7th rule. Hi there, everybody. This is the free-for-all with Cirroc Lofton, and it's going to be intense. We've got Malissa Longo here. We have our resident Sherlock Holmes expert, Faith Howell, here. Thank goodness for that. We've got Lieutenant TJ Jackson-Bey. Looks like those are lieutenant things. We've got Jason Okun hanging out with a cool background as usual. We've got Dr. Susan V. Gruner, looks like with an OG 7th Rule shirt. Yep. Burnt orange color. Looks cool. Allison Leach Hyde's got her Abyssinian kiosk shirt. Mr. Chris McGee is wearing a radical new 7th Rule shirt. It's exclusive. We got Mr. Matt Boardman here sharing my same background, practically. And Carrie Schwent wearing an R2-D2. Wait a minute, that's a Dalek shirt. And Mai is live in Tokyo with a shirt that Faith loves.
Looks like the crystalline entity.
Is it?
Yeah, no, it's Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Looks like the white tree, right?
Colors. Yeah, the white tree with bright colors.
Very cool. All right. Mr. Chris McGee, I proclaimed earlier that there were no NAMs. Was I wrong?
No, you were not.
All right. Cirroc, what was the thing that we said we were going to... Oh, yeah. Got it. I remember now. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
True. I would say this is I'm going to go higher. I'm going to say a 7.4.
Oh, Mark Eaton's height. Mark Eaton's height. Anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
I gotta say, at least
voted less than a 10. Less than a 10 is wrong.
7.6, 7.7, somewhere there. It's probably below 8, but close to it. Sort of, yeah, mid-7s.
Right around Minute Bowl. Got it. George Mirasan. Anybody else?
What's the highest bid? 7.8. I'm gonna go 7.9.
I'm gonna call 8.2.
8.2.
Whoa!
Wow.
8.2. Ooh, got a hater.
9.5.
Good answer. Good answer. 5.5.
The survey
Sue
says,
wow.
No, 9.5.
Oh,
9.
The answer, of course, is Mai's the closest, 8.1. Very good, Mai. The magic of the white tree. And lastly, we're talking about
this is the highest rated episode so far, I would say. I think this is the first 8 rating that we've gotten on this show.
I thought there might be one that was like right at an 8.
I think so too.
I don't remember.
well, 8
Must have been Code of Honor.
Code of Honor.
Justice. My vote's for Justice.
Oh, you skipped the naked now.
So the writer of this episode, whose name is Brian Allen Lane, we were talking about him. He's written for a lot of cool shows that'll be a nice blast from the past. Shows like Blue Thunder, Remington Steele, Hunter, MacGyver, Matlock. I mean, this guy, that's the blast from the past. Anyway, moving on. Melissa Longo, please get us started on the right track and let us know what you thought of this episode.
I like this episode. I have to agree with what Eve was saying before you hit record. I like that Dr. Pulaski is testing Data, and I like her curiosity with Data. She's hesitant about him and not willing to go whole hog. I don't know what else with him right away. But she's definitely has a curiosity about him, and I like that. And she's willing. To me, it seems like she's willing to be proven wrong about him, and thinking that he's a sentient being. I also like Moriarty and the complexity of Moriarty and the question he raises in that Star Trek often does is what quantifies life, and just because he's made of holograms, does that mean he's not alive because he isn't a giant bag of mostly water? So so I like this episode. There's a lot in it, and I like the questions that it asks, and I like that Moriarty wasn't a villain, like a typical villain where he just wants to destroy. He didn't want to die. And who does?
Interesting, poignant. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Oh, you've got the Victory right behind you. That's cool. The USS Victory.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Faith Howell is our resident Sherlock Holmes expert and Lord of the Rings aficionado. Why do you think this episode should have been a 10?
It's just good fun, and you guys know I like any episode where they're out of their uniforms, shall we say. And so it's just fun. It's fun to watch. I love the wordplay with, oh man, I shouldn't have said defeat Data of all people. And I also really like that this is sort of a precursor for the Doctor in Voyager, and that the whole sentience, can we create something, and Vic Fontaine too, can we create something that attains sentience, and what do we do with that? I kind of wish that we had seen more of Moriarty's adventures, and I thought maybe we would get that in Picard, but what a tease. So
great stuff. Thanks very much, Faith Howell. TJ Jackson-Bey is out in Missouri sporting his favorite ship, the Enterprise. But which one? The one from Enterprise.
Hello, hello. Yeah, I enjoyed watching this episode again, especially since, like Faith mentioned, we got kind of another tease of Moriarty. And, in watching it again this time, I got a chance to really appreciate what the producers and staff, must have seen in this actor for them to keep bringing him back. And I thought that, his plea to continue to exist was really heartfelt, and and it grabbed my attention more than it ever had before. And so I'm glad I got a chance to revisit this episode. Mm-hmm. And I also enjoyed the banter between Pulaski and Data and LaForge. And I thought that in the way that things played out, the computer both proved and disproved what Pulaski was saying, that a machine wouldn't be able to confound Data. Well, it did. But also Data wasn't able to, Data didn't win, but the computer did win. So it did both sides of the equation. In what she was trying to argue, that a non-biological, thing wouldn't be able to achieve that level of thought and independence. And I think my favorite line from the episode was probably, where did I put that? Other than Picard cursing in French, Moriarty saying, "I'm a civilized abductor, Captain Picard. Civilized, but still dangerous."
That sounds like a line you would say, TJ, in something for sure.
Dramatic, of course.
Thanks very much, TJ. We've got Allison Leach-Hyde hanging out here. What's up, Allison? What do you think of this interesting little episode?
Well, I've always liked this episode. It's a ton of fun just to watch Geordi and Data's friendship. Like, we actually get to go hang out with them. Usually we just get little snippets of them, talking while walking down hallways, but we've got to go on an adventure with them, that they got to hang out and be friends. And I love that Geordi just got mad at Data while Data's all fanboying in the beginning, going through all of his stuff, and then just whips out the end of the episode right away, or book, I should say. And then he's like, I'm leaving. I'm done. I'm not doing this. I thought that was great. And I love Geordi's line of, I was looking forward to the mystery. And so I think that's where we got into all the trouble in this episode, is Geordi wanted a mystery, and he had to get his friend, who's a living computer, and try and beat him. So I always enjoy that. And the painstaking, intricate details that Geordi put into the victory, you just know he put into the D in Picard. So it's a full life form. So I really enjoyed that callback too. And on the back end of everything, Rob Bowman, the director, was very upset because they took a day out of his shooting schedule. They were going to have 8. They brought it down to 7 to save money. But I mean, you saw those sets. So he referred to this as one of the worst shooting experiences he ever had, trying to shove a 2-hour script, cutting it down to a 1-hour script, and doing it in a day less time. So for that, I think Rob did a wonderful job and made a great episode.
Wow. Good knowledge there. Cirroc, that might call back to what we were discussing, how it seemed like some scenes may have been cut out, like Worf getting all dressed up and then just not having anything to do with anything. Or like when Data said that there were 2 people that grabbed Pulaski, but then we never met the second person. Right. Might have been part of that. Mm-hmm. That may have been the reason. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here. Thank goodness. What's up, Sue? How are you? What do you think of this episode?
I like this episode. Yes, it's fun. And the funny thing is, when I knew that this was coming up, I thought that I hated it when it came out. But I was wrong. I totally liked it. And like everybody has said, it's fun. I really like that we're getting to see that relationship between Geordi and Data. And I don't want to give away too much for those who haven't watched this before, but I really like that the Doctor questions Data a little bit, what he can and cannot do. And I like that she's open to what he can do and she questions him. And I think that's important. Back in the day when this came out, everybody hated Pulaski. They didn't like the way she treated Data. And she's going through a learning process with somebody that she's not used to dealing with. I mean, most people have not met somebody like Data. So
most people.
Most people. Most people. So I loved it. I love the setting. I love the old London. I love the guy's Cockney accent. He didn't pronounce the "it hurts" instead of "hurts." I love all those details. Yes, this is a good one. Starting to get good.
Thank you, Sue. That made me very happy. Jason, what's up with you? Jason Okun is here. Good to see you. What do you think of this episode?
Hello, everyone. This one actually has a sort of a little special for me. I think it was the first Next Gen episode I saw beginning to end. So this was my first, and I probably watched it because I saw an advertisement, a little ad for it, and it was Sherlock Holmes in it, and I just wanted to see what it was like, and that's what got me to it. So I mean, it certainly has a special place for me that way, and it is perhaps certainly up until this point one of the best episodes of Next Gen. It's one of the best of the season. For sure, and perhaps one of the most expensive ones they've done. And Allison, they did cut it today, but it still was probably one of the more expensive ones, certainly because of the sets, the number of extras, and Rob did a wonderful job. I mean, certain types of framing, and I'll just put one thing up so you can see. I mean, this is just wonderfully framed. I mean, he really uses the set completely, and you see the scope of it all. So a few low shots focusing on a shoe, for example, as Data and Geordi come in, and then they rack focus on them from the shoe, which is really something that was interestingly done. So it was wonderful to see. I mean, there are a few things here and there, and we can talk about them later. But it's a wonderful experience to see that it moves along pretty fast. It's interesting that they cast Daniel Davis. The script calls for a tall, angular man as Moriarty. He is anything but. So it was interesting, but he did certainly a wonderful job, and it's very entertaining. It moves along pretty fast, and it just beginning to end. It's pretty tight. I mean, again, there are things here and there, but it just has that wonderful look to it. I mean, the money's pretty much on the screen.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool. Yeah, anything but angular might be an accurate depiction. Thanks very much, Jason Okun. Mai is live in Tokyo, and she knows angles and all geography. Wait, no, geometry is the right word. Mai, can you save me? How are you?
I'm barely awake, but yeah, doing well. It's a cool 90 degrees with 81% humidity going on. It's fun. This is a great episode. It's so polished. It could have been the 9th season level quality. It's fantastic in that respect, I think. The initial interaction shows the dichotomy between Data and Geordi's relationship. There's a complete childlike playfulness that happens, and then there's complete professionalism when that's called for. And they switch back and forth very easily between the two, and those two in tandem work better than I think almost any other pair. I really like that. I think Geordi more so than Data has the ability to contain both of those, the childlike playfulness and the professionalism. And I think that's what makes Geordi's character so rich and so deep. I really, really like that a lot. I think Moriarty killed it with the Latin. His hard G on cogito ergo sum was very good. I like that. I thought there was a bit of Tolkien in this actually. Moriarty's stated goal reminded me of the later kings of Numenor, whose goal when they traveled west was to continue to exist. And then later when he adds to that by saying, what I have seen, what I have learned fascinates me, and I do not want to die. And I thought this was a curiously secular and experience-based desire. Again, very much what led to the destruction of Numenor. So I thought that was all really, really nice. I would have liked to see them develop that a little bit more. Maybe start with it earlier in the episode, move and see where they could take it, because it's a really interesting thought. Star Trek has this throughout its stories, but I thought one thing in particular was interesting was a human playing opposite of an android, expressing the desire to want to be alive. That was kind of funny. It was like Geppetto telling Pinocchio that he wanted to be alive or something. It was interesting. And lastly, Moriarty is a smooth operator. I really like his style. So that's what I've got.
Mm-hmm. Crumpets.
All right. Thanks very much, Mai, and good Jade knowledge with the smooth operator. Carrie Schwent is here. She nodded. She gets it. How are you today? What do you think of this episode?
Good. I enjoy this one. When we did the Picard episode where he popped up, I mentioned how much I love that guy. Love his deep voice, and in doing a little bit of research, I found out the other day that this role and the other role he's known for from The Nanny, the butler in The Nanny, he's not actually British. He's from like Alabama or something. That absolutely floored me. I had no idea.
Wow.
And I think that's so cool. Because usually it's the other way. Usually it's the other way around. Like on The Walking Dead, you've got so many of them that are British playing American. So it's interesting having it flipped the other way. Data
or
is
British
fantastic.
Playing French.
Yeah. Data's fantastically over the top in this episode, and the way he switches back and forth so quickly between like his Sherlock voice and his Data voice and back again, so much fun. And if you notice when he says the game is afoot, he's holding Dr. Pulaski's shoe when he says that, so the game is literally afoot. Yeah, lots of fun little bits like that, like Worf near the end. I startle very easily. Worf, you're a Klingon warrior. What's your excuse? He jumped about a foot when Picard popped his top hat open. And then he went all like this with his hands. I startle easily, but Worf, what's your excuse? And there's an interesting backstory with Arthur Conan Doyle's estate, which I'll have more time to get into in the second half. But yeah, one more thing before my limerick. Pulaski does take a good step forward with me in this episode, like the way Susan and Melissa were saying. She rubbed me the wrong way those first two episodes, but she definitely takes a nice step forward or two, in my opinion, in this episode. And she looked fantastic in that episode. And her and Moriarty were up to something when Picard comes in the holodeck and she stands up and she's putting herself back together. They were up to something.
Wow.
All I could think of was, okay, dirty. Anyway, we won't go any further down that road.
We could. I mean, other things left unsaid.
Before I start blushing. But I'll end with my limerick for the episode. The game is afoot on the holodeck. Doc gets invited. She says, "What the heck?" Moriarty gets smarter. Beating him will be harder. Picard's solution he doesn't reject. So there we have it.
All right. Thanks very much, Carrie. I don't even know what to make of that. Were they really you think they were I don't know. We'll have to talk about that later because I did not catch that. Matt Boardman is here to write this ship. What do you think of this episode?
Okay. Yes, I love this episode. I think it's fun. I mean, everything about it, it's very, I mean, while there's some serious implications toward the end, as we kind of talk about what is life, I like the comparison that Moriarty makes with Data. He looks at Data and says, well, is he alive? Which I think is an interesting foreshadowing of things to come later this season. And but it's just a fun holodeck adventure. I love that we see this friendship between Data and Geordi starting to really kind of blossom here. I thought it was great when, Data's playing the violin and Geordi stops for a second and he's like, wait a minute, that's actually really good. And but one of the parts I think is really fun to me, we've seen this version of Picard, through most of the first season and even into the first few episodes here, the second season, where he's always got this hard edge to him. And then we get to the end of this episode, and I mean, look, I have been in that place where Geordi has been, right? I mean, I have called for the computer to create a character that could defeat. No, I'm just kidding. I've been in positions where you make a mistake and it's had some pretty big implications, and it sucks. And you can't help but wallow and feel horrible about it. But I love that Picard at the end of it comes down and he checks in on Geordi. Like, he specifically makes the effort to come in and check on Geordi to say, we're going to be okay. Yeah,
everything's in perfect order, essentially, is what he says.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I thought, to me, that what a great way to kind of end that episode, but also to start to show that Picard is not just that, that hard-edged guy that we've seen him to this point. Like, I don't know, to me, that's a great characteristic of a leader, is that, yeah, sometimes you're going to have situations where you do have to come down on people, and yeah, it was your fault. But you know what? At the same time, I'm going to show you that it's okay. We're going to survive. We learn, we grow, and we move on from this point. So, fun episode.
Thank you, Matt.
I agree with you, Matt. I wrote the same thing down. I said Picard is softer with more compassion for his crew this episode. I felt the same thing in that last scene, that normally he flies off the hinge and, likes to reprimand somebody. And in this case, I thought he was more thoughtful and deliberate and kind of compassionate towards, it was a mistake. I get it. Let's figure out the solution. I thought there was a softer side of Picard that I enjoyed. I thought it showed a lot of growth.
See, I wish Eve were here to hear you guys saying scintillating things about Picard and see her lips purse up. Chris McGee wearing a Radical News shirt. What is up, Chris? How are you today? What do you think of this episode?
This is another one of my favorites from the second season. And of course, I'm not alone, thankfully, unlike the last episode. Of course, it is, you could, sum it up as just another holodeck malfunction meets sentient AI plot smashed together. But I think it's a little more than that. And I'll say all my nitpicks all but one of my nitpicks for things left unsaid, but I will mention one because I promised Chad I would last time. It's interesting how Geordi, when he was looking at the drawing of the Enterprise on the paper, he apparently had been looking at it upside down because he flipped it over right side up for the camera to see. I guess they didn't have the time or the money to shoot a reverse angle to see it over his shoulder or something. Oh well. Anyway, but I really love how this episode, Moriarty's evil plan isn't really evil. He just wants to survive. It's a fight for survival at the end of the day, and that really makes him much more human and relatable. And I really enjoy that rather than just having a villain who just twirls his mustache, whatever. I like how he brings up cogito ergo sum. I'm not going to say any more about that, but I will say that he does point to Data and say, does he have life? He's a machine, but is that all he is? Of course, Picard just responds with a simple no, he is more. But don't worry, we'll get a better answer to that question in about 6 episodes. And yeah, the whole ending conversation there, the confrontation, that was very reminiscent of how, very timely almost, how we sometimes think of AI like ChatGPT or Google's AI Lambda as being sentient. I think it is exactly a year ago this month that Blake Lemoine of Google claimed that Lambda, their AI language model, was sentient. And so we have to, remember this is it's just another instance of like sci-fi paving the way towards the future, and how we actually are creating AIs now that we can't tell the difference whether or not it's really sentient or not. But I love how this is much more, timely now than it was back then, probably just predicting the future in a way.
Mm-hmm.
As for my memorable quote of the episode, it's just one word, and it has sadly fallen out of style in modern parlance, and that is footfalls.
Ah, yes.
I love that one.
Very good. My favorite was by Data. You guys hear that? I'm like, is my mic filtering it out? I don't know. All right. Cirroc Lofton, this has been a fun one. Do you have any final thoughts on this radical episode that I think everybody here liked more than I did?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Final thought. One I wanted to say was kind of along Chris's point about AI. When Geordi asked the computer to create something that would be a challenge for Data, something that it wasn't programmed. So it basically tells the computer to program something new. And to me, that's an advancement in technology that we just now have gotten to the point of where coding can be done by other computers. We normally code the computer ourselves and tell it what to do. Now the computer can do the coding. And so it's almost like we're at a point where this is a reality. And I think that just that small little idea was something so ahead of its time for them to kind of introduce that concept of, telling the computer to come up with something new. Now with AI, where obviously you can say, hey, make a photograph of this person in this situation doing this, or create a song that sounds like this person mixed with that artist. And so we're at that point now, and we just got here. And for them to have kind of conceptualized that in 1988, 89 was pretty advanced for me. Also want to say the language in this was pretty amazing. Just to be able to write in the style of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, to write in that style, but also to use certain words and phrases. I thought when Professor Moriarty called the computer Mr. Computer, said Mr. Computer,
yes,
just to do that, I thought, oh, that's pretty special, because that's something that would be accurate for a person in his time period to identify it like that. So I thought that was accurate. Also, when Moriarty was identifying Geordi, he said, that dark fellow used the word arch. And it's appropriate for that time period for him to use that, even though, I wouldn't want to be called that dark fellow, but according to that time period, it would have been accurate. So I just think that language-wise, they actually nailed it for me. And then the other last thing I was going to say was Dr. Polanski. One of the things I really enjoyed about her performance was the speech she gave about value in losing. And she said there is value in losing. And that reminded me of this past weekend with my daughter's basketball tournament, and they lost, to the eventual champions of the tournament. And instead of, being sad about the moment and wallowing in the pity of it, I try to focus on what you can gain from losing. Like, what are the things you can do different? What are the changes you can make? What are the things you can better yourself on for the next time around? And so you're prepared for moments and situations. And so when we lose, we actually gain the knowledge of what not to do, right? Or what to do better, or where our deficiencies lie, and how we can become better. And I thought that Polanski gave a very good insight into that mindset when she talked about it's how we learn. And that made me like her more, because she saw the value in that and also was trying to help Data see the value in that. So those are my big takeaways on this episode. And then we can go into more stuff in the after things left unsaid.
Great stuff. Losing teaches lessons, right? Or builds character or something like that. But that's true. Good points. Thanks very much, Mai, Carrie, Matt, Chris, Allison, Sue, Jason, who, by the way, I saw the wheels turning in Jason's head when, who was it, Matt or Chris mentioned Geordi flipping the photo, the picture over. Jason was trying to think like, yeah, they could have shot that from a... Anyway, thank you, Jason, TJ, Faith, Melissa, everybody at home. Thank you so much for joining us. What a wild ride this has been. The wildest of all until next episode. And we will see you then. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.